Firefighters will get it tonight.
But the employees could have gotten it.
Yes.
And what about the PC and the council? Should we send it to them? I only asked one person, and that was Sharon, and she goes, yes.
Okay.
And the reason that it even came up was because my nephew asked.
You what?
My nephew said, are you sending it to volunteers?
Oh, yeah. That's good. I like it. Okay.
And that could just be done by the email. You guys have
the original, yeah. Well, we have the letter.
You like having the email tree, is what I was trying to say.
Right. Whichever.
This is fine.
Hello, Miss Christie. How do you hear us with that new microphone?
It honestly sounds the exact same. I heard some paper shuffling.
Well, maybe you're not. We're not going to be able to fix that. What I'll do, what I think it's going to do is just better cover the room but sound the same, is what I hope. So conversations like, Paulina, if you wouldn't mind saying something.
Hi, Christy. How do I sound?
Glorious.
Okay.
Okay, well, you answered right, so you must have understood me. Well, I'll just try and then say it clearly.
That's all we can do. Although it did sound hilarious last night with your connection. Because it sounded like,
Wow. The first time?
The first time. I've never,
It was really weird.
Chad?
Yes, ma'am.
Your council chambers video, though, has been frozen since I joined. I don't know if it's me or you.
How about that?
Oh, yep. I see Justine moving now. Okay.
I'm just that little speck in the back. It's so lucky.
Would you like me to zoom in? I can. I am expecting Dan in here as well.
Yes. He was quite adamant about wanting to be here. Is Josh coming to give this report?
I think he's going to do it online from his office.
Okay. We have a quorum.
Hello, Councilor Rita. Can you hear us okay?
Rita, this is a test.
Did I pass it?
Did I pass it?
Did I pass the test?
Yes, you did.
Good, thank you.
Gold star. And Brent, how do you copy? Maybe stepped away for. Hello, BB.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you.
Hi, BB.
Is that Glenn?
Yes, it said Glenn.
Okay. Take my glasses off for the mask. Darcy, Brett, Tom Teets. Telephone, but just curious. Hey, Jen.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hello. How are you?
I'm well, how are you?
Good.
Not yet. I was just gonna, same we were waiting.
Yeah, we're waiting on Carrie, so go ahead, you got 2 minutes.
Hello, Jeff.
It's Glenn, the auditor.
What's that?
It's Glenn, the auditor. Oh, yes. It's up there in the top. Yeah.
And one introduction.
I've never met them.
Just go over what we did. Sure. You know, it's pretty. And then as well, you have. It's just in your degree seems to be overflowing on this original. Well, you saw it.
Can you believe it? It's the end of the, well, no, it's not.
100%.
I think about 2 weeks ago, they had last in 1 week.
Stuff is growing.
Those four sobs.
It could be. There it is.
Yeah.
And then
All right, we're here.
all the council, Wallace, Chief Bowman.
Okay, we're gonna call the September 1st, 2021 Gerhart City Council meeting to order. Is there a declaration of conflict of interest by any member of the council?
No.
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 And we have three sets of minutes to approve. First, the August 4th, 2021 regular meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
I have a correction.
Was that carried?
Yes, it is.
Go ahead.
Okay, on page 5, second line from the bottom, believe it should be residents, not residents in our community. Well-being of our residents in our community. Did I make that clear?
Yes.
Okay. That's the only correction I have.
Okay, is there a motion to approve with a correction?
I move we accept the regular meeting of the City Council August 4th with correction.
I second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 That motion passed unanimously. Second are the special meeting minutes from August 11th, is a public hearing to consider an appeal of the planning commission decision from John Banta. Is there a motion to approve?
I move that we
I
approve.
move to approve.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Read it.
Well, thank you. I will go ahead, Brent. I move that we approve the minutes of the public hearing to approve the appeal of a planning commission decision from the Banta family regarding file 2101P.
And I will second that.
Got it. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? And third, the special meeting, August 13th, 2021. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes of the special meeting August 13th.
I second it.
Okay. All right. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 5 approved, 0 nay. Next, we have the Planning Commission report from August 2021. Any questions or comments by the counselors?
I'm curious if staff has an idea as to why the application from Sophie Gerhardt was pulled. So we received an email. I think that the gentleman, Bob Morey, thought that maybe there was some things misconstrued by the staff after we had given the report out, after the staff had opportunity to comment. So he said what he was going to do was kind of reconnoiter, take a look at some things, and then bring it back at a later date. Thank you.
Any other comments on the Planning Commission report from the counselors in attendance at home?
Nope.
Oh.
Mayor's report, I'll be brief. Some of the things that I worked on this month include going to the prom rededication for the 100-year anniversary of the prom. Today we've signed the collaborative agreement on the ELK for Classic Plains. I did a 90-day check-in with Justine to understand how things were going in her new position. Attended the parks planning meeting, and then of course we were all at the meeting.
This is your city council meeting. I'm just going to listen in while I lay in. Well, I'm not going to be in the bathtub.
There's
Caller.
someone.
Caller's been muted. Okay, thanks.
I also worked on a fire bond blog that I will post tomorrow. It's my perspective on the fire bond that we are going for in November. I also penned a letter that went out today to employees and will go to volunteers likely tomorrow with a plea from me to please get vaccinated for COVID-19 and do it more with the hat of being a registered nurse than as the mayor. I also worked on potentially updating our charter. I got a copy of the model charter from the Oregon League of Cities. And so far I've done beginnings of a gap analysis between our current charter and the model charter to understand fully what are similar parts of it, and there are some that are similar, and some parts that are very, very different. And I would just ask if there's a consensus, or I can get a consensus of the council to put that project on our goals list for next year. I don't think we can get it done in the next 3 to 4 months. But if I could get some feedback on that, it would be appreciated.
I'm all for it.
Sounds good to me, Paulina.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for taking that on, and I would be happy to help you.
Thank you, Brent. And
I feel it should be done by a citizen committee. To me, this is a major undertaking, and to not get buy-in from the community, I think would be inappropriate. To me, this requires as much diligence as a Parks Master Plan or a transportation system plan, TSP. Can't say the words, but to me, this is something we shouldn't rush into. That it's something that really, if we're going to do it, we want to be thorough.
do you want to take a look at the work thus far?
I'm less concerned about what I think and more concerned about what our community will think.
Okay, I appreciate that feedback. That's all I have.
Could I ask Dan a follow-up question? Are you suggesting exclusively citizen committee or council supplemented with citizens on a committee?
Often committees have maybe had a council representative, but that would be, it's usually a council representative. So it's, deciding, depending on how big you want the committee to be, somewhere in 5 to 7 person range, I think would be appropriate, but to not have it overshadowed by council, but actually have it brought up through the community effort so that when it goes to the voters, because it has to go to the voters, that there's buy-in from community members.
Okay.
Paulina, I've got a couple of ideas. I'd like to talk to you maybe sometime this week or next week about how we can incorporate more of the citizens and less of the council and have it proceed on its own feet for the buy-in that Dan is talking about.
Yeah, okay. I appreciate the feedback from everybody, and we'll have more conversations. Councilor Warren, do you want to go ahead with council reports?
Oh, sure. I had a really nice conversation with Ali Mayeda, Congresswoman Bonamici's community liaison, and talked to her about the fire station relocation project. She was very excited to hear that, and we have their full support in competitive FEMA grants. This is in addition to the BRIC stuff that we've been talking about. The FEMA grants are competitive, so we'd be going against other cities, but they offered to write letters of support or co-sponsor an application, so that was fantastic. I also talked to her about the shared zip code issue with Seaside, and I explained the issues that result from that. And she thought that that could be accomplished. She said it's probably not going to happen overnight, but their office would certainly be willing to spearhead it because they have a very good relationship with the local, or not local, but regional USPS representative that does that kind of thing. And let's see, what else? That's enough for now. Thank you.
Thank you. And Rita, do you want to go ahead?
Mayor, I have nothing, so that's it.
Okay. Dan?
I have nothing.
And Carrie?
Only a couple of outside meetings talking about different issues with Brent and the mayor, and of course, attending the joint work session.
And
that's all.
Thank you, Carrie. And moving on to city officer reports, Chief Bowman submitted his statistics. He did give me a brief rundown this afternoon on the new reports, and I can't tell you what they all were, but he had a very succinct report. And do you have anything else? He's up there somewhere.
He may be having, he mentioned some computer problems that he was having with his speaker microphone.
Okay. Interim Chief Josh, you have a report.
I do. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Just as a quick note, Madam Mayor, your vaccine plea, I'm going to read it tonight at drill after we're done here, and then it's going to be posted next door for them as well. And then we'll send it to them also. You guys have not yet received a full response report from last month because the system has a 24-hour delay from when we enter calls to when it can show up when we run reports. As soon as it has all those, which should be first thing tomorrow morning, I'll run that report and send it to Christy and she can get it to you guys from there. Last month, we did have a total of 82 calls. We ended last month on call 461. Last year, we ended August on call 298. So that puts us 163 calls ahead of last year.
Wow.
Last month's call breakdown is as follows. Inside the city limits, we had 40 calls. For the calls in the district, we had 30. 3 of those calls, we received auto and mutual aid, and I'll expand on that here in a moment. We sent aid to Seaside 6 times, sent aid to Napa once, sent aid to Lewis and Clark once, sent aid to Warrenton once. We sent aid to Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office once for the wildland conflagration in Lakeview. We sent aid to OMD, which is Oregon Military Department, which is the fire department at Camp Rylea. We went there twice for some brush fires out there. The 3 calls that we received auto mutual aid on were as follows. One was a brush fire out on Seals Road, and ODF came. It's protocol that ODF comes to all wildland brush calls in anybody's district in the county. We had a structure fire Monday night, Tuesday morning, north of Katy Court. And so we had agencies, we had Lewis and Clark, Warrenton, and Seaside on scene. And then we had other agencies in the county move up to help with that one. We did have a med call on Old Bog Road. We were still on the fire on Katy Court. So we did send an apparatus with manpower to it, but we had Seaside move up to help backfill us to make sure that our district and everything was covered from that end to make sure citizens of Gearhart are taken care of. I received an email about occupancy rating concerns. You guys should have the email in your packet as well. It was titled occupancy and fire rating concerns. In it, there was kind of 3 points the person was talking about. One was vacation rentals and their occupancies. One was potential egress issues, as well as the third concern they had was location of the new fire station. I'm working alongside the building official to monitor occupancy concerns with short-term vacation dwellings, as well as current short-term vacation dwellings have occupancy ratings, and they've been approved by the building official to operate as such. Regarding the plane crash situation that happened years ago, it was a really tragic event, and we're unsure what factors occurred during that event, but that was before all these short-term vacation rental protocols were in place that we now have. Regarding the home's insurance ratings, that was a concern of the new fire station's location. What I have learned on this topic is homes' ISO ratings are made up, or the departments get an ISO rating off of a multitude of factors. such as fire hydrants locations and pressures, the equipment we have, the volunteers we have, their training and certifications, as well as the distance from a fire station. What I have found is that the distance to a fire station is mainly in concern when you're dealing with commercial properties. And that benchmark in commercial properties needed to maintain the ISO class 3 rating that we have is 2.5 miles. The new location to downtown Gerhardt, the core, is 2.13 miles. So the new location, as far as I can tell, won't affect the insurance ratings that we currently have in place and have worked extremely hard to achieve thus far. Just to reiterate, the ISO ratings is because of how many volunteers we have, which is another reason the volunteers are so important for our community. For reference, this is my 5th council report. I do submit them. They're available online after the meeting, and you can find and review all of my past reports. Past topics I have included cover such as fire department staffing, mutual aid and response protocols, conflagrations and demobilized, how that benefits the city and the department, mental health awareness, and how we're doing much better assisting our volunteers to cope with a daunting task of providing professional level emergency services to the community, firefighter certification process and what that takes, how well covered the citizens of Gerhardt are due to the certifications held by firefighters, the cost benefit of having volunteers versus full-time firefighters, what would have to happen for a merge with the city of Seaside for fire department respects, explanations for the purpose on both of our current stations, some limitations of our current station, who owns our apparatus, and our current ISO ratings our fire holds. Thank you for your time, and that concludes my report for this month. Does anybody have any questions or anything?
No questions.
I have a comment about the fire rating and how it potentially ties into the zip code. So when we moved to Gerhardt, we applied to get quotes from 5 different companies. 2 of them had us put in the zip code of our home, and it came back and they said, sorry, we can't approve fire insurance on your home because the fire department is too far away, because they defaulted to Seaside because of 97138. And it required going to Chief Eddie and having him write a letter and send it into the insurance company saying that no, Seaside is not the closest fire department Gerhardt is. So it's just another example of the issues we have sharing a zip code.
Yeah, and I've had to write multiple of those letters. Often people need to know how far their house is from the fire hydrant because those affects it as well. We've done multiple letters to insurance agencies to prove that we are. And Seaside, so Seaside, like us, there's a city as well as a fire district that cover. And they used to be an ISO 3.5. So like the city of Seaside was an ISO 3 and their district was a 5, I believe. So now that we are all 3 for Seaside's district, City of Seaside, Gerhardt's district, as well as the city of Gerhardt, it helps that we're all the same across the board. But yeah, a lot of times we get questions and people think that we're don't have stations as close as we do because it does default to Seaside's only station.
Thanks, Josh.
Anytime.
Thank you, Josh.
Of course. If you guys need anything from me, please let me know.
We're going to move on now. City Treasurer's report, Justine.
The city has received the Coronavirus State and Local Financial Recovery Fund, which is now the acronym CSLFRF money, which was referred to as the American Rescue Plan in our budget. So when we budgeted, we were anticipating some COVID relief money, and the name now has a fancy acronym. The state of Oregon has distributed to the city of Gerhardt approximately around $181,000, which we received on August 23rd. It's the first installment payment, and it has been distributed throughout our budget in our revenue stream as we budgeted for it, proportionately dividing it out between the general fund, So if you look in the revenues report, it's under 10,070, and we put about $126,000 in there. Water fund 30, we received about 41,000, and then in the road district, we received, we put in about $12,000. The city is required to complete reporting to the U.S. Treasury no later than October 31st on these funds. We have several years to spend them, but they want us to report on a regular basis, even if we haven't spent any money yet. And the account name in our chart of accounts, I did add that acronym because we did only have it under America Rescue Plan. So if you look under the revenue, you'll see the grant CSLFRF in there. As you are aware, the Oregon law requires local governments to file our annual fiscal reports and other issues with the Secretary of State Audits Division. The city of Gearhart will go over the audit report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020, a little bit later. However, there is an additional audit report that needs to be filed for the Gearhart Road District because it is technically its own taxing entity. And so I've been working with the Secretary of State's office to try to get that work completed and to get that registered with its own number and identification. I've been working with the Public Employees Retirement System in terms of non-qualifying and qualifying staff designations. The city needs to go back and reevaluate employees that may have been incorrectly designated as non-qualifying employees, which means that they're not being put into the retirement system. And there may be a financial impact if contributions have to be made retroactively on these people. So we're tracking them, and I'm also working with PERS on them. We have also recently learned that one of our debt service interest payments that were due in July will be refunded back because of our bond refinance. The payment was due in July, and the bond refinance wasn't completed until the end of August. Or July, and then we didn't receive the money until August. So we had already made an interest payment, and US Bank has sent that back. It's about $51,000, and it has to stay in the debt service fund. So, and that's all I have.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
The way you stated it early on about the money that came from the federal government. Mm-hmm. Are we expecting another chunk of money?
Yeah, we received 181. We're expecting around 330 total.
And I have a question, and it's regarding on the revenue and expenditure budget versus actual sheet. It's the transient room tax 10-0053. We've already taken in 45% of our budgeted amount of funds. Is that just a summer anomaly, or is that a trend?
Yeah. Thank you, Councilor. It is the end of summer. It's probably the largest quarter of the year. Ends in 2021 and then begins this year for the budget. So it'll even out, but that's typical for us. I don't have the numbers what last year were, but I think so far, I think it's trending a little higher.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justine. And
Justine, I have one more quick question.
Sure.
On the chart of accounts service, is that new, or am I just oblivious and never noticed that before?
Which one? I'm sorry.
QuickBooks payroll service.
I think it's always been on. I don't know. I'll have to look, Brent. I think it's been on there, but it might not have shown up because there was nothing in it.
Huh. Okay.
So I can look and see.
I just didn't know if you changed the chart of accounts to include that, doing a different procedure than we have in the past, but maybe not.
Not on purpose, but I can check and see.
It may have been there and I just overlooked it, but it just popped out as something new. Maybe I'm just losing my memory.
I doubt it.
Thank you. And Peter Watts, you have a report.
Sure. So the big news is that we have gotten an elections ballot title challenge that came in that was filed by Mr. Zimmerman and Mr. Gable. Specifically, the issue was that the geotech work that we have had done is preliminary. So we don't have final geotech, and they believed that that should be part of the ballot title in the summary. I'm statutorily limited to 175 words in the summary. And so it's not possible to put every element that goes into a decision in there. There's case law on what needs to be in there, and it's basically the purpose is to inform the voters of the major effects. So that would be, what is it, which is bond authorization, how much, is it per thousand of assessed value, what would it be used for? Those are the major kind of issues that go into it. I've never seen a level of detail such as whether you would have final geotech or final architectural. Usually you wouldn't, because you want to make sure that people will authorize it prior to incurring those expenses, at least in my experience. So they asked for one of three things. They asked that the judge enjoin it from going on the ballot, or that the judge put in add language or order us to add language. Practically speaking, the deadline for it to go to the county clerk in its final form is tomorrow, close of business. So if we get a ruling from the judge by tomorrow, close of business, then it will be on the November ballot. If we don't, it can't be on the November ballot. It would be kicked to another election. Council would need to decide whether they'd want that to be in February or in May of 2022. The original hearing that was scheduled, which was scheduled at the time of filing, was for September 9th, which would take it off of the November ballot. The court clerk is aware of the issue and the deadline. The last election ballot title challenge that we had was in 2017. In that case, the judge ruled without holding a hearing. So that is, or oral argument of any kind. So that is something that could happen in this instance. I don't know whether it will or not. At this point, it's outside of our hands. And that's, I guess, the major update that I would have as far as the other cases that involve the city. They're all just kind of going along. The earliest hearing that we have scheduled on any of them is the US Bank case, and that is in late November, early December. So we still got some time before anything happens there.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. And Chad.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So just a few things day to day. The building department, we're working on a potential new contract with the building department. I'll keep the city council involved in that, but we may be splitting those, the building department office manager and the building official into two separate areas, and then adjusting our contract so that's an appropriate amount for both. We're going to put this, I hope, on the October agenda, so I'll have more to report then. Public Works was going to go on to the agenda this month for a funds request of over $50,000. And that funds request was going to be for our water conservation plan. Our current plan is 10 years old, and we have to update it every 10 years. So what we're doing is going out to bid for a couple of different entities. And we have also found, with the help of an architecture firm, potentially 2 grants that could total up to $50,000 to go ahead and conduct that. So instead of this month, that'll be next month. I'll let you know on how we do on those grants. Vacation rentals, the chief reported on those issues that were mentioned in the letter. No others to report at this time. Citizen Advisory Committee with Parks Master Plan touched on that. We're going to have another emergency cash day, the access date for the barrels, and that will be in October. We'll blog that information out this month. Ridge Path, as some of you have seen, the decking is up completely, and tomorrow the railings are going up. We do have a contingent of volunteers that are going to be there at 9 o'clock to help with some of the sawing and some of the connecting the railings to the decking. And if there's anybody interested in helping with that, 9 o'clock tomorrow at 10th Street near the Ridge Path. Let's see, Elk Collaborative update. That was exciting today. We finally are getting to a point to where we can begin doing some work towards that. Playground equipment is on tonight's agenda. It'll be a brief discussion of where we're at. Fire station update. Peter went ahead and made sure that was clear. Let's see. We submitted a small city allotment grant call for projects. In the amount of time that we had, we went ahead and wrote this grant for sidewalks. So hopefully we'll be able to get some money for that and get into a project of updating some of our sidewalks. Work sessions, upcoming Tuesday, November 30th at 6:30. We have one scheduled. We don't have anything on the agenda for that one at the moment, but I think that we're quite busy with all sorts of things. So I'll work with the mayor and the council on deciding what it is that you'd like to have on that agenda so we can get into it. At this point, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Any questions for Chad? And next we have correspondence. We did get another piece of correspondence from CASA with a thank you for our donation that we gave to them a couple of months ago, and a letter from Trails End Art Association and Gallery about their 70th judged show, and we got another correspondence from Jeannie Mark about the Highway 101 fire, and another about fireworks from Marianne Smith, urging us to not put a ban on legal fireworks. There were several other pieces of correspondence in the packet from Chief Bowman and Stephen Weed. That one Josh Como referenced in his report. Are there any other comments about correspondence?
I have a comment.
Yes,
or a question. Well, I thank our fire chief for answering the questions about the fire rating. That was going to be one of my questions. The other question I have is about the hiring process for the police department. Is there going to be a hiring panel, or is this just going to be the chief of police that does the hiring? Is there an interview panel, I guess is what I'm asking.
Jeff is here. I think that there will be, and if he has time to answer on this, I think there is a portion where the public can meet and greet, but for the most part, with the delicacies of there being a police officer being hired, TNT is going to be helping us with written portions and the hiring process. But I believe Jeff is the one to do the hiring on that position. So don't think he had a plan for a panel on that, but we need to make sure to double check with Jeff.
So what is TNT?
TNT is an organization that helps with the written testing portion of the hiring process.
Okay, so there's no interview panel at all?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
All right, thank you.
Does Jeff want to speak to that?
Yeah, if Jeff, you're available and you want to speak to that, go ahead and unmute. Again, he was having some computer problems.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm curious if Peter has any comments about Chief Bowman's concerns in his correspondence.
Peter, did you hear the question?
Yeah, I did. And, you know, I kind of said what I said last meeting, which is that your charter and your code are in conflict. There are multiple plausible interpretations of the code, in that I thought that the section that that Councilor Smith addressed could be read in two ways. One, that it could be read as adding to who was a direct report to the city council. The other way is that it could be read as to whether or not you could terminate the officers that reported to the city council. That too is in conflict with your charter, because your charter includes language that certain positions can only be fired for cause, and which is very unusual. And the code does not. The charter also doesn't list the city administrator as one of those officers, although the city administrator has always been treated by councils as a direct report to the council. So there's just a lot of ambiguity. And as I said last meeting, I think there are multiple plausible interpretations, and that you're entitled to vast deference in your interpretation. Whether or not I think that interpretation was the most plausible, I don't believe that it was made in bad faith. I believe that the council is trying to struggle with how do you compare a charter and a code that are both ambiguous and at odds with each other, and how do you interpret what the city council of Gerhardt, to my knowledge, for as long as I have been the city attorney, has always interpreted that the city administrator is essentially the supervisor of every employee except the police chief, and that you know, that if that's not the case, I don't know how, practically speaking, the city would function. Because, for instance, I don't know who the treasurer would report to or the auditor would report to. The auditor provides contract services for the city. So, you know, I think that this is an opportunity. There's an opportunity to, what I'd say is, conform your code and your charter. How you guys decide to do that is up to you. You know, every other city that I represent has either 2 or 3 employees. It's the city attorney, the city manager, and if they have a municipal judge, the municipal judge. Some don't have a municipal judge, they contract those services. So your charter is very unusual, but that doesn't mean it can't be your charter. I was surprised with the tone of the letter, because it's the sort of letter that I would expect, or I would expect that there'd be some element of bad faith before that sort of letter would go out. That's not what I saw. You know, I think I gave you my opinion that the most plausible interpretation of the code, in my mind, would be that you'd be able to replace the city officers. But again, that's, you know, because the charter does, it goes charter to code. but there's so many ways that they deviate from each other. It's really hard to reconcile them.
Thank you.
Could I say something?
Go ahead.
So in my mind, we, the city, historically, there is a precedent for hiring an officer that is not specified in the charter. And as Peter just mentioned, the city administrator is an officer. It's not mentioned in the charter. So what we did was really less egregious, if you want to use that word, than what the council did decades ago. And so I think the only way that you can reconcile that precedent is to say that the council has wide discretion in hiring and structure of the administration to function this, to carry out the functions of the city. So there. And I do wish the chief had used a better form of communication and asked questions before he shot from the hip. Pardon the expression. Thanks. That's all I had to say.
Let's see if somebody else has. Does anybody else have comments that we haven't heard from? Go ahead.
So am I reading into this, Brent, that you're wanting the council to take control of hiring the fire chief? Is that what the goal of what went on last month is?
No. We have a process already in place to hire the fire chief, and there's no reason to change that hiring process.
Okay, I guess I didn't understand what you were saying. Thank you.
I would like to just say something now. In making that motion, I was keeping continuity for what I thought was something that had been in existence for enough time to be real. The chief of the fire chief had been a city officer ever since I've been a counselor, and had been since Chad came on board, and proceeded to keep him on the list as a city officer. There was no objection at any time until we made it by council motion. There was no amendment or addendum to anything. It was just keeping everything the way it was and has been for 10 years, maybe 11. And I think everything has been blown out of proportion for I don't know what reason, but that's all I've got.
Thank you. Next we have our visitors section, and I have a note here that Baby Michelle has requested to speak, and I see you on screen, or a picture of you.
All right, do I start? If I start, here I am. I'm speaking for myself, Baby Michelle, and my husband, Eric Halpern. We live at 661 10th Street. This is with regards to the fireworks ban. I strongly support banning all fireworks in Gearhart. I think we can all agree that the safety and well-being of our community is important to all of us. Celebration is part of our Gearhart community, and how we celebrate our holidays in Gearhart matters. Spending time with our families, watching the Gearhart 4th of July parade, munching on cookout hot dogs. These are all fun and festive ways to celebrate the hard-fought freedoms we enjoy. Yes, fireworks may be a tradition, but fireworks cause harm to many in our community. Our freedom to shoot off fireworks ends when it causes harm to others. With freedom comes responsibility and consideration for each other. We disrespect the sacrifices made by our veterans who may suffer from PTSD if we shoot off fireworks for our pleasure when it causes veterans great pain and anxiety. We disrespect our first responders that come to our aid when we are injured by fireworks or race to extinguish fires caused by fireworks. We disregard the needs of our pet companions who are traumatized by the relentless barrage of exploding fireworks. We disrespect our beaches when we leave fireworks litter for others to pick up or to be carried out by the tides polluting our ocean. And we disrespect each other when we don't consider what we do causes distress to others. Living in community with each other requires empathy, care, and kindness. Let's look for better ways to celebrate. Please ban all fireworks in Gerhardt. Thank you.
Thank you, Bibi. And would Christy know if we had anybody else who would like to speak?
Christy, let me just double check my email as well. Christy, are you aware of anybody else that would like to speak?
I am not. I do see quite a few participants. Maybe we suggest, would like to speak, they use the raise the hand function at the bottom of the screen.
Darcy has a hand up on my screen.
Darcy doesn't have her hand up. Thank you, though.
Yeah, I don't see a hand up either. The two callers here, I'm going to unmute since they cannot raise their hands if they would like. There's a phone number ending 696.
I still show them as muted.
Yeah.
That person is still muted. And the other ends with number 255. If you'd like to speak, just unmute. Okay, seeing none, I will just quickly go through several other people. Tom, please. It looks like caller 25. Caller 255, go ahead. Please identify yourself and give your address.
All right.
Okay, Tom, if you're interested in speaking, now would be the time.
I don't have anything to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lisa?
I think Lisa just wanted to.
And finally, Joseph Smith.
There's a Chris down below.
Oh, and Chris? Says Chris's iPad.
Is he still muted?
If you'd like to speak. No. Okay, we'll move on. Next up.
Mayor, excuse me, Madam Mayor, I forgot there was one more piece of correspondence that I would like to respond to. Is that all right?
Go ahead.
So the correspondence was from Deanna Mansell, and there was a few things that I agreed with. For example, local government should have the highest integrity. I fully support that. She compliments herself on her research skills for discovering that my wife and I are married, even though we have different last names. But she failed to continue with her research in that when the construction limitations were first raised, I did disclose that my wife was involved along with 30 or 40 other Gerhardt residents in an effort to limit the hours of construction. And I asked for a ruling if that would be a conflict of interest. Our city attorney ruled that it would not because I had no actual or potential financial gain in that effort, and that my wife should not be penalized for exercising her rights because I was on the city council. So I did disclose it. It was ruled upon, and that's all I want to say. Thanks.
And just for people that are interested, if it's something that's citywide legislation, which this would be, it is virtually impossible to have a conflict and you can't have bias unless it is a financial conflict of interest. And so, and even then, if you're part of a generalized group of people, what we've seen from the OGEC comes back as no. It's always a good idea to check with the Oregon Government and Ethics Commission if you have any questions or if there are finances involved.
Thank you.
And I have a correction as well.
Go ahead, Chad.
Madam Mayor and Council, I just got an IM from Chief Bowman, and his intentions are to have some sort of panel, and he's going to report more in October. So he just messaged me. Thank you.
Okay, and we're going to move on now to ordinances and resolutions. We have resolution number 963, the water bail bond trust account dissolution. And I'm going to ask Justine to walk us through that.
So the city of Gerhardt currently has a bank account with Columbia Bank that was originally created for water deposits, and it had transitioned into a municipal trust, municipal court account. We had hired an accounting consultant that had come in to help organize and to help structure the previous city treasurer to make transactions easier for her. The accounting consultant did not look at our entire system and how all of our transactions work. So we had this account that they were putting money into, and the way it's supposed to work is you put municipal money in, and then you write checks out. So you write them to the city of Gerhardt for municipal judge fees, you write them to the Clatsop County, and then you write them to the state of Oregon. And in theory, they balance each other out. So the revenues come in and the expenditures come out, and there's no money in there. It's like an in and out. It's not really an expense to the entity. So the problem that ended up happening is QuickBooks, they pulled it out of our chart of accounts and set it into another QuickBooks chart of accounts. So they were running transactions in this QuickBooks account using this bank account that we had that used to be water deposits. But the way that our system works is every time a credit card payment came in, it went into our other account, our regular checking account. And the person didn't understand all of those transactions. So then we had one QuickBooks going on over here with one bank account and our regular chartered accounts, which everything should be in, happening on this other set of QuickBooks accounts. So the auditors, it was one of our findings, had recommended that we eliminate one of those QuickBooks and just keep track in our one chart of accounts, which we can easily do. what I would like to recommend is that we also get rid of that bank account. There isn't a reason why we have this bank account out there. It just requires more reconciliation. It requires different checks, all the different things, deposits. When we can merge it right into our chart of accounts and keep track of it just as simply. So our recommendation is that we just eliminate that, roll the money over. We know how much is bail, trust, municipal courts. We roll that over into our chart of accounts, and then we roll over the water deposits into the water deposits into our regular account, regular checking account, and eliminate that other one.
Okay. We have two options, it looks like. One is to make a motion to resolve to dissolve the trust bank, and the other is to do nothing. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion we resolve, they make a motion to dissolve the bail trust account, formerly water deposit, held with the Columbia Bank. Resolution number 963.
I'll second that.
Is there any further discussion or questions of Justine? All those in favor say
Makes a
aye.
lot of sense.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is the fireworks discussion. And we've heard from Bibi and we have a staff report. Chad, do you want to walk us through your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. So the council has expressed interest in pursuing the fireworks ban, or at least learning more about it for the city of Deer Heart. So our staff did some great research, and we put together a partial draft of a possible fireworks ban ordinance. The version does incorporate the beach dune areas owned by the city. And it would also take care of the piano key lots as well, as they are in our urban growth boundary. But it doesn't extend through the urban growth boundary because only zoning code applies to the UGB. So that would mean the Palisades, the Highlands, the beach, outside our municipality and outside our urban growth boundary, would not be affected by this particular ban. So we've got some finds, we've got some ideas, but turn the page to the drafts. We got a lot of this from the city of Deer Heart. We've done a lot of research, and staff has spoke to some of their staff and had some discussions. So we put together some possibilities of what this would look like. It's a working document. We have also we have the Deer Heart Fire Department that has issued just a kind of a basic staff report as I asked them to do, as well as Chief Bowman with the police department. After that, this document I think is important to understand, this fireworks frequently asked questions, because it answers a ton of questions about what is legal, what isn't legal in Oregon, who's responsible for taking care of these things and such. So it's a good document, including consequences at the end. We also have a letter from Allison Green that was from earlier June 2021, and it also has a good description of the authority to regulate. And then the other couple of pages is what I took off of the Oregon State Fire Marshal website, and some things that Chief Josh Como had given me to give an idea of some of the items that they will not be. So at this point, we don't have any recommendation to go forward, but the council can decide what they'd like to do to either have us move forward with a better draft, or if you'd like to include this in a future work session or what have you. So, Madam Mayor, that's my presentation.
Okay. Councilors, do any of you have any comments at this time?
I'd like to make a motion that we order the staff to come up with submit a draft ordinance to the council in the near future for banning fireworks in the city of Gerhart.
I will second that.
I would like to make a comment. Okay, so while I agree with Bibi Michelle as she is a great steward of Gerhart, in reading the letters from the acting fire chief and the chief of police, I realized that causing a fireworks ban would cause more harm than good. And so I tend to disagree with Councilor Carey and Councilor Brent. And I'm just following the wants and the desires of the two chief of polices and the chief of fire. So that's all I have to say. I hope I was articulate, God knows.
And one question, Chad, is this a draft from what Cannon Beach did? I think you mentioned your first.
Yeah, we took a lot of the parts from there after some discussions, and there's some things that are unique to us as well. Yeah, that was just a framework to start.
I will just, well, before we vote, I just want to say my concern about doing an ordinance right now would just be, is it really going to solve the problem, which I think is probably mostly occurring on the beach?
I disagree.
Okay, yeah.
I can't hear the beach at all, and I hear fireworks for days around the 4th of July.
No, I agree with that. Whether or not it's inside the city, though, I don't know. Okay.
I would guess that it is inside the city, but I have them in our neighborhood. I think this year was less than in prior years. I think it's more because of COVID than anything else. So I wasn't bothered as much because usually I hear fireworks weeks before and a week or two after 4th of July. So if it was just on the 4th, I probably would say, let's just buck up. But when it's ongoing, it's really disruptive to, as Bibi said. I know veterans also that go into PTSD when they hear loud firework explosions. And I don't think we should put our citizens through that.
Madam Mayor, if I could, the motion simply to bring it back for a council discussion. And so I just, because this was noticed, so everybody knew it was going to be on the agenda, but we're not yet in a public hearing for it. And so I think it probably wise to avoid too much debate around the issue other than when to bring it back for more discussion. And I have a feeling that members of the public probably would be quite interested in this sort of thing. There are a variety of items that people I think have identified that would be important to the public for discussion.
Okay, I would just say before we vote then, this would be a great topic for our November work session. But if the council wishes to deal with it sooner, there's that option too. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Did we get all those opposed?
I counted 4.
Rita, your hand up for
I oppose.
Okay. Okay, motion carries 4-1. And so council or staff will bring us back a draft, a tighter draft or another draft at a later date.
And sure, in what we could do is work on the draft and bring this to the council. We've got some time, so we'll organize our schedule depending on what happens here within some of the other items that we're taking care of, and get it done well before July, or at least have the discussion well before July.
Well, if we're talking about needing a subject to talk about at our work session in November, we can get this drawn up and bring it to the table at our work session, and we can talk about it at that time.
Plenty of time to do so.
Yeah.
Yep. Sounds good.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to new business, we have our annual audit report, and this is actually for 2020. And I believe is Glenn Kearns available? Is he going to walk us through or give us a bit of a presentation? Yes. Hi, Glenn.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to be pretty brief and just kind of walk you through some of the highlights here. But if you have any questions, please feel free to stop and I'll answer questions as best I can. I'm assuming everyone has gotten a copy of the financial statements. As you flip back into the financials, past the table of contents, you'll come to the independent auditor's report, which is, in a nutshell, what the city contracts with us to provide. And as in prior years, we are offering an unmodified opinion on the city's financials, also known as a clean opinion. Basically, what that means is in performing tests of balances and transactions and so forth, we didn't find anything that under our professional standards would require us to modify the opinion for any reason. So again, that's what you're looking for. I'm going to touch on just a couple of high points that I think you need to maybe be aware of. If you have your financials, you want to flip to page 3. That is the statement of net position, basically just a fancy name for the balance sheet. What I want to focus in on there is a couple of line items. That very first line of current assets, your cash and cash equivalents, totaling about $922,000 at June 30th, 2020. And then about halfway down the page, you're going to see a subtotal for total current liabilities, totaling about $631,000. The reason that I highlight those two items is when you look at those two totals in comparison, it's what's referred to as the current ratio. It's a ratio a lot of financial analysts use in looking at an entity's liquidity, basically its ability to meet ongoing liabilities as they incur within the next 12-month operating cycle. As a general rule, you should have a minimum of 1-to-1. 2-to-1 is better. Anything above that is obviously much better. At June 30th, 2020, the city's current ratio was only about 1.46 to 1. So not horrible, but also not great. So it's something I think as you go through, and we'll know more as we get through to doing the 21 audit, obviously, because these numbers are fairly stale given that they're over a year old. But it's one of those things that probably needs to be monitored and managed, again, just because it's a good indication of the city's liquidity. If you flip over to the next page, which is the statement of activities, again, just a fancy name for the income statement, if you will. This statement reads a little bit differently than most income statements. The standard is set by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, and it's intended to be read left to right and then top to bottom. And the top section really is designed to show the reader whether or not the primary departments or activities of an organization are self-supporting. Now, it's not unusual for the governmental activities to not be self-supporting. You're going to see those kind of negative numbers in the governmental activities column because most of your general city operations are supported primarily by property taxes and other state and local taxes. What is not as unusual or not as usual is if you look at your business type or your water activities, you're going to see that for the year ended June 30th, 2020, the user charges were almost $200,000 less than the operating expenses for the water system. And that's something that really does need to be monitored moving forward, because it's an indication that either your rates aren't set at a sufficient level or your expenses are higher than they need to be, because utility funds, enterprise funds by nature are intended to be self-supporting and operate like a business. And obviously, like a business, you can't continue to run in the red forever, because eventually the coffers will run dry. So I think it's something that the city just needs to monitor as you go through, you know, the ongoing fiscal years, and when you get ready to look at budgets and those sorts of things, just be cognizant of those charges and the expenses and so forth, and monitor that as you go forward. Kind of flipping all the way back into the financials, then back to page, like starting on 39, which are your budget to actual statements. These are the statements which align with your budget versus actual reports that you're getting on a monthly basis. And I'm going to key in on the two major operating funds of the city, the general fund and the water fund. So when you look at page 39, it's the second page of the general fund budget versus actual. What I want you to kind of key in is what we normally look at. Part of what we look at when we're doing an audit is how an organization's major operating funds are managing their carryover balances in lieu of operations. So if you look at the column that's titled budget basis and go to the very last number of $282,772, that was the city's ending fund balance in the general fund for the year ended June 2020. So theoretically, that was the fund balance that was carried over into the 2021 fiscal year. And while that, you know, $200 or just shy of $300 may seem like a lot, one of the things that we look at is how many months worth of operating expenses does that number represent? What we like to see is usually 3 months as a minimum. 6 months obviously is preferable. The reasons behind that is, and I think the last 18 months or so has shown us that especially given COVID, that in any given year, it is always possible that financial resources may be restricted. They may dry up. You may have a constriction on property tax revenues or those sorts of things. And so having adequate carryover balances into the new fiscal year are crucial in maintaining your operations, especially until you get into November, really when property tax revenues start rolling in. What your ending fund balance at June of 2020 for the general fund really represents is only about 2.1 months worth of operating expenses, which again is lower than what we would like to see from an audit perspective. When you flip over to page 51 and you're looking at the water operating fund, again, same numbers, looking at the bottom budget basis ending fund balance of just over $83,000. What that number represents is only about 1.26 months of operating expenses. So those are definite things I think that you need to be looking at as you move into the current fiscal year and as you begin the budgeting process for the next fiscal year in trying to build up those ending fund balance, those carryover balances to give yourself a little bit more cushion in case something were to go sideways. So those are kind of the key points I think that in my opinion were really relevant for the year ended 2020 under audit. I'd be happy to answer any questions that any of you may have.
Any questions from those of you at home?
I have a question. Glenn, on the basis of accounting, you say that we are working on a modified cash basis. And would you rather have us do an accrual accounting, or are you satisfied with our modified cash?
No, I think modified. So the city budgets on a cash basis, and then it's your government, your financial statements that are reported at the modified cash basis rather than accrual. And what that really means is that the modification to the cash basis is that we're recognizing the debt that the city has, and we're recognizing the capital assets that the city has acquired. Those are the typical modifications to the cash basis. And I think for a city the size of Gearhart, modified cash is absolutely fine. A lot of times what happens is, and we've seen this in a lot of past audits where, you know, we followed up on previous auditors that maybe have operated on a cash basis and they've been converted to accrual. What we find is no one really understands the numbers anymore, because accrual-based accounting is difficult, you know, challenging to understand. And if you don't have adequate training and so forth, it is unusual or difficult rather to make the numbers make sense. So I think given the size of the city and the way that you all operate, there isn't anything wrong with that base of accounting, and no, I would not recommend changing.
Are you finding that other cities are migrating to the accrual accounting?
No, and we're understand that our primary niche, if you will, in the governmental audit arena is small local governments, cities, fire districts, other special districts. And I would say actually the majority of them are still on true cash or modified cash basis. And until such time as either the state of Oregon or the standard setting boards mandate that you move to full accrual, for cities, you know, like yours that is small, and you know, what most folks understand in their own personal lives is cash, sort of cash in the door, cash out the door. No, I wouldn't recommend changing. And no, I don't see most of the smaller entities moving to full accrual, because again, it takes those financials and puts them in a format that the layperson just doesn't understand.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think the audit is fantastic. I'm a retired banker, so I've seen a lot of these over my lifetime. I liken accrual accounting to trying to drive a car through binoculars looking 5 miles ahead. It's really hard to do, and you tend to miss the potholes that are right in front of you. So I think we're right spot on with the modified cash, and unless we turn into Portland, probably no need to ever change from that.
I would agree.
Thank you, Glenn, so much for sticking with us tonight and giving us those highlights. It's much appreciated.
All right, thank you. And as always, if you have questions, staff knows how to reach us. We're always open and available for questions if anyone has any.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn.
Oh, I have one last question.
Oh.
So when do we start on the next year's audit?
Well, we've already actually started on preliminary work. I'd have to double check our calendar to find out when we have you scheduled for field work. I believe it's a little later in the fall, but we've already started working with staff in getting us year-end information for the June 30, 21 audit. And I've already had staff working on some of the preliminary things that we can get done before we show up.
Fantastic.
Justine, anything else to add? No. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
All right, thank you. Y'all have a good evening.
You too, Glenn.
All right, take care now.
And next, we have playground equipment quotes. Chad, do you want to fill us in?
Thank you. Yeah, this is just be a quick update. I have made contact and discussions again with Harper's Playground and Compan Playgrounds. A lot of the discussions around the playground, once we started getting these quotes, were some of the comments were, well, it's more metal based. It's not as woody or as natural as what your heart may deserve or enjoy. So while we have these quotes, and some of them are, you know, $80,000 and $60,000. Currently, we have $86,000 both in the budget in the parks category, and then $31,483.27 that came in during the fundraising. So 86,000 is where we're at. And there are some adequate playgrounds that we could do in here. But in talking with some of the folks with Harper's and Compan, Harper's especially at the moment, the wooden structures are much more expensive to build. And there's a little bit more upkeep, but they look very nice. And some of them were, I think, would fit Deer Heart very well. So coming up in September 27th and 28th, I'm attending a 2-day seminar with Harper's. And what they do as well is they also do fundraising. And they'll look at a community with a fresh or nearly finished Parks Master Plan. We'll begin writing some grants. We may be able to get some things in for that. Compan is participating, and they have some ideas for us as well, but we haven't seen any information come in as far as the cost and things, but we do have a new person that I reached that will help us. So our choices are is to, continue to move forward with some playground equipment to satisfy some of our needs that we have currently right now. And we have some good quotes from, I think, a good company that does the metal style. Or we can wait till the end of September and go through with Harper's and Compan and get some different styles that I think will be more than what we have saved, but there's a really good potential for some grants. So that's what I have to report for now. And if you wanted to give me some direction, we can begin talking about going with one of the plans that we already have, or wait till the end of September to do some more work.
If we place the order today, any idea of when it would be installed?
No, I think, I can't remember exactly, but I know it was a few months.
So we're starting to get in bad weather based on an order today scenario.
Depending on the size, there are some things that we can do, such as the swing set and a few play items for the park across the way that could come in sooner if we wanted to do something small and set up. But then depending on which direction we go, would that fit within what we wanted to plan and what we want to do?
I guess the reason I'm asking those questions is waiting a month going to cause us any grief? I don't see it causing us any grief.
I agree.
The usage in November, December, January, February, March probably aren't going to be great, whether it was there or not. As long as we can have something for springtime, it seems to me that we should explore all our options.
Two things really happened, because I know that well, the mayor especially, and some of the people that helped raise the money, they'd like to see something sooner than later. But this was really difficult to kind of move forward, and then we have some different opinions about what we wanted to do. The nice thing is this could also dovetail with the Parks Master Plan conversations. But Christy is going to offer some more help to get this through, and we'll have lots of information, I think, coming up within the next month. So our goal is to have some information for both Harper's and Compan to compare to this, and then we can start deciding what kind of funding we can do if there's a gap, and how we can do that.
I'm absolutely all for waiting until the end of September for those different construction ideas. I think the folks that I showed the ones that you have there in your left hand over there. It was less than enthusiastic, so I think we should keep looking. And I know George Van Humisson, he would really like to see something in a more aesthetic wood type structure. And it is a #1 priority of the parks plan to get something, but I think that's what that committee would appreciate as well, in general.
Yeah, so like I can appreciate the desire to get something done quickly, but if we keep the people who are involved in the fundraising educated as to what we're doing, give them a status update and say, here's what we found so far. We're going to look at a few more bids and here's the time frame for reviewing those. They should understand, and you know, another month or two isn't going to make or break them.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
Any other thoughts, Rita or Carrie?
I'm all for going to wait until we see what wood structure looks like instead of steel or plastic.
I'm ambivalent.
And if any of the counselors would like to attend the 2-day online conference with Harper's, I'm sure we could make some space for you.
I'm afraid I'll be out of town.
Is there any benefit to having more citizen involvement in the installation, much like the grade school did several years ago? I assume in that case there was economic benefit to the school district. Does it make sense for us to do something similarly?
I think it does, because that was a lot of fun. We had a great time, and thank goodness we had so many builders there at that time, because if some of us administrator types would have been in charge, it would have lasted as long. Yeah, it was in there really well. Yeah, I think that would be great. I think the quotes that I'm going to get include installation, and then we can work backwards from there. Because if I start, go the other direction, it could end up with a higher quote. But yeah, I think community participation would be fun. And there's a time and place in Parks Master Planning where the community is going to be involved as well in helping us make some decisions. But Christy and I will move forward with this. We'll have more for you to know in November, and we can make some decisions then.
Rita,
hey, Chad. Oh, Chad got one more comment on the installation. When you speak with the vendors, some of them or all of them may require their approved installers to do it for liability reasons. That some may allow us to have volunteers do that, but I imagine, if something isn't anchored properly and the swing pulls out of the ground and smashes some kid, they don't want to be liable for somebody else's work. So that would be a question to ask all the vendors to see if you could get it without installation and still have warranty coverage.
It may be best to be a hybrid plan, so we can take a look.
And Rita, if staff has any, needs any help with any grant information, can you be of assistance?
I would be happy to assist. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Okay, finally, our last agenda item, we have discussion on COVID update procedures, and there is a draft. This is a City of Gerhardt, if you will, draft procedures, right?
Well, actually, this is more of an informational about what we were working on. The draft procedure, we just got finished today, so it's not ready because we have to review it. But I can do some reporting on that, better talk about that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. So as we know, the governor released a new public health rule and modified it or revised rules that was implemented earlier in the month. And basically what it does is it's requiring people in the medical field, including volunteer firefighters, to have a COVID vaccination to be able to respond. So we've been digging through this, this mandate, if you will, and the information that's been provided to us. We have informed the volunteers and the firefighters at multiple events. Again, they're talking about it, or they talked about it tonight as well. And they have been given the information about what the requirements are going to be. A vaccination starting fairly soon, and by being fully vaccinated by October, what was it, 18th, thank you. So we have the timeline, we're aware of what we need to do. Justine and I have been working on the draft policies for this so that the staff is fully aware how this works, or excuse me, the volunteers are fully aware how this works and what they have to do if they'd like to continue to respond. So they've got some decisions to make. So Chief Josh Como, Justine and I will be helping them through this. The other part in this is that the city adequately monitor the situation in regards to the paperwork that comes in to certify people or not, and how to keep those records. So we're working on that as well, but I think we've got a good basic policy that keeps it fairly simple for us. And there's a lot of information in here in this draft that kind of, that you haven't seen yet, that helps guide us through this process, both from the administrative side and the volunteer side. So we'll continue to update the volunteers and the other emergency responders here, and start working through this, hopefully getting a few more people vaccinated and be able to respond.
And does this apply to CERT members?
If the CERT member was to respond with any medical capacity, it would apply to them. And this could be all the way from a first aid responder, I think, to somebody who maybe still has their nursing certificate, and as some of them CERT do. But yeah, it covers anybody who would basically be touching a patient for almost any reason. Some of the issues we're working out with, as well as the volunteers, as well as some didn't want to do the emergency medical response, but wanted to do firefighting and car accidents to stay involved in the health. We're kind of hard pressed to make that work. It is everything that the fire department does can end up with a patient. We can, there's a possibility that even something that just seems so simple, we can end up with a patient. And trying to manage that on scene is really, really difficult. So we're letting this, the firefighters know that for all reasons that has to do with fire response and medical response, that this would apply. Any questions for me? I'll be working with Peter moving forward with this, and Justine and Chief, and we'll let you more know how to go. We'll report on it as things progress. Okay. Thank you.
I think Peter wanted to say something.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is kind of rapidly evolving. And right now it's pretty clear that it covers all volunteer firefighters. We're not sure if Governor Brown will continue to include others in this or not. What we're dealing with right now is one of the primary things we're trying to do is making sure that people have accurate information regarding who is covered and making sure that we have that system in place by the 18th. If we have people, and then if there are people that aren't vaccinated, that's going to be a separate conversation, because we do have a self-reporting requirement, and it is $500 per day per essentially per volunteer. So obviously we don't want to lose any volunteers, but it would be pretty easy to rack up some fines very quickly, depending on the situation. So these are all things that we just need people to understand and know, and then we need to be kind of flexible because this all has evolved very, very quickly. One order replacing another order within a week that did some dramatically different things. And so we're just trying to keep up with everything and trying to make sure that we have accurate information out there.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. And finally, we have council concerns. Dan, you want to go ahead?
I know I've said this before, but I will reiterate it. I feel very strongly that we need to be meeting as a group in person. And I actually feel it's somewhat not somewhat, I believe it's a letdown to the community to not have what I consider to be full participation. And I'm assuming it's not just me, that when I'm in a meeting and we're not in person, I'm not as engaged as I am. I'm sitting here. I assume I'm not an anomaly when I have to tell it. That it's so easy to be distracted in another capacity when you're not in the room with everybody else. And I think we owe it to our citizens to be fully engaged, which means we should be in this room together. Thank you.
Yeah. Rita, concerns?
Yes, Mayor. The only two questions that I get asked by the public is if there's any new news about what's happening at Gearhart Crossing and what is happening at the Gearhart School property. Do we have any updates?
Madam Mayor? No updates on the Gearhart Crossing. I know Ms. Lowenberg does have the property up for sale. And I think we've had a few people start asking questions about it, but nothing serious so far. As far as the school goes, it looks like Mr. Maury is continuing to work on and repair the building, do some updates to be able to protect it from weather, and I think doing some things to the parking lot for some better parking and things for something in the future. So that's all I have for you right now, Ray.
Thank you.
That's right.
Hey, Carrie Snow.
My only concern is, and it's not really a concern, I'm going to speak to Dan about this. I am not going to come back in those chambers until I can be assured that I am not going to be contaminated by anyone. And that is because of my fragility in my medical condition. And I've been told by my doctors I need to be extra vigilant in not exposing myself to any of this COVID variant or COVID itself. So I'm going to be virtual until such time as I got an air scrubber blowing clean air on me, and I've got at least 6 to 10 feet between me and anybody else. And that's to preserve myself and my wife. That's it.
Thank you, Carrie. And Brent.
You're muted, Brent.
Does that mean I wasn't engaged? I'm sorry. Yes, Dan, I sympathize with your desire to meet in person. I wish the World Health situation was better. It's not. Delta variant is terrible, It looks like there are additional variants coming from Africa, Latin America, that are even worse than Delta, more transmissible. I can't see us meeting, or at least having the general public come to chambers for the foreseeable future. So that's my opinion. The concern that I have right now is the amount of misinformation that's hitting social media. We've always had it in Gerhardt, but it seems to be ramping up. There's been a lot of posts about the proposed land swap and the fire station. Specifically, there's been posts saying that the costs are $16 million plus a 20% contingency. So they're totally ignoring the figures that the city has officially published and making up their own numbers. And people are listening because it keeps getting repeated and recycled by other people on social media that they think, oh, gee, if 6 different people have posted, it must be true. And I don't know what we do about this, because we're facing this on a national basis with misinformation. And I just don't know what the solution is, but it's a concern.
Thank you, Brad. Would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Dan got it. Would someone like to second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, everybody. Great meeting.
Bye, guys.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you all.